Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. This evening, we had a couple of technical difficulties that delayed the start of the meeting, but we're fine now. Microphones have been restored. Madam Clerk, I understand we have regrets from Councillor Khan and Councillor Robinson, and Councillor Hutchins is with us. Council, do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Thank you, I see none. A motion, a mover and seconder would be in order for a motion to resolve in the committee of the whole. Councillor Duddick, Councillor Lapworth, all in favor? Opposed, if any? And we are resolved in committee of the whole, which is the custom for planning and development issues, because some of our items are hearings and involve consulting the public extensively, and in committee of the whole we have relaxed procedural rules that maximize our ability to hear from the public, which is a very important value to this council. Council, the first items, I guess I'll just add for the public, as advertised, the meeting tonight is split over 2 nights, and the items to be considered tomorrow night, March 10th, are items number 11, the Downtown Transportation and Streetscape Study, Final Study Report, number 12, the Downtown Parking Garage Feasibility Study, and number 13, the update on the Downtown Cultural Hub. So those items and their delegations will be heard tomorrow night starting at 7. So now, Council, I'll call your attention to the consent items on today's agenda, the number 1 and number 2. Councillor Adams moves the consent items.
Are there any members of the public here for either of the items? Just want to make sure.
Doubtful. Any members of the public with information for Council on items 1 and 2? Councillor Adams, your
I'm
motion,
willing to move both.
Your motion is in order. Council, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? The consent items are adopted. Council, we have 2 confidential consent items. Could I have a motion? Councillor O'Meara. Councillor O'Meara moves the 2 confidential consent items, C1 and C2. All in favor? Opposed, if any? And the confidential consent items, which is one matter is about the Ontario Municipal Board appeal of a minor variance application respecting 255 Allen Street, and the other is update and instructions re OPA 4 and bylaw 2014-14 appeals. Now we move to our first public hearing item, and the first public hearing item is the public meeting and recommendation report, the draft plan of condominium for Fernbrook Homes, Dorval Limited, 160-222 Dorval Drive, and the recommendation is that the Director of Planning Services be authorized to grant draft plan approval to the draft plan of condominium submitted by David Fay and Associates, subject to the conditions contained in Appendix D. And the members of the public, Council's already read in detail these reports, but for everyone's benefit, our planner, Paul Barrette, is now going to provide a presentation so everybody understands what we're doing here. Mr. Barrette, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor Burden and members of Council. A draft plan of condominium has been submitted to create a common element condominium for an approved 62-unit townhouse development, which is currently under construction. The purpose of this presentation is to introduce the planning application in conjunction with the statutory public meeting and provide an overview of staff's recommendation. The report can be found on page 15 to 34 of tonight's agenda. The subject lands are located at the northwest corner of Rebekah Street and Dorval Drive and are part of a larger plan of subdivision. Vehicular access is provided from a private rear lane. The townhouses front on a Dorval Drive, Rebekah Street, and Hanover Street. Council approved a zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision on May 22nd, 2012 to permit, in part, a townhouse development with 62 units with vehicular access from a private rear lane. Final site plan approval was subsequently granted on June 6, 2014, and the subject 62-unit townhouse development is currently under construction. A draft plan of condominium application has been submitted to create a common element condominium inclusive of a private rear lane, sidewalks, 16 visitor parking spaces, and landscaping for the approved development. Staff recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions in Appendix D as the following requirements have been satisfied. The proposed plan of condominium meets the criteria established in Section 5124 of the Planning Act. The proposed plan of condominium conforms to the Livable Oakville official plan and complies with the zoning bylaw regulations applicable to the subject lands. A full circulation has been undertaken and there are no outstanding financial or planning issues to be resolved. The development has been granted final site plan approval where site servicing, grading, and stormwater management, landscaping, urban design, and financial considerations were fully addressed through conditions of site plan approval. And the application for a common element condominium is necessary for providing shared ownership and maintenance of the internal site servicing and amenity elements and is appropriate for the orderly development of the lands. In conclusion, Your Worship, staff put forth the following recommendation as shown for Council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barrette. Madam Clerk, do we have delegations registered for this item?
We have none registered.
Just ask if there's any members of the public with information for council on this. I see,
Sorry, we may have
I
registered.
don't see any. Don't be shy, put a hand up. Not seeing any hands. Any members of council with questions for staff? Any news from the clerk's sheet? Anything? David Fay. Mr. Fay, you didn't put your hand up because you didn't want me to call you out, but I've called you out because you wrote your name down.
Because I wrote my name down, yes. Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. I'm here tonight on behalf of Fernbrook Homes, merely to advise you that Fernbrook is in agreement with the staff recommendation and ask you to approve the draft plan of condominium this evening. Thank you.
So you're happy?
Yes.
Thank you. Council, do you have questions for Mr. Fay? Council, does anyone have a motion? Councillor Duddick. Councillor Duddick has moved the recommendation. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? And that carries. However happy you were a minute ago, you're happier now, I imagine. All right. Public hearing number 2, agenda item number 4. There's a memo distributed to you, Council, and with a revised recommendation, and I hope everyone is in receipt of that. I don't see any objections. And if we give our attention now to Mr. Joe Nethery, away we go.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Nervous before you tonight to fess up to some not less than perfect writing on my part. Before you is a housekeeping and technical corrections zoning bylaw amendment. It's 45 items long, so let me just hit the main points. There are 4 main themes contained within this. There are 4 main themes of amendments within this bylaw, as detailed in the main staff report and further detailed in Appendix A to that. The amendment before you is minor and corrective in nature. It deals with a number of technical matters that improve the interpretation and overall usability of the new zoning bylaw 2014-14. Again, as has been a consistent message from staff over the past year and a bit, matters related to development applications or municipal board appeals are not generally a part of this bylaw. Those should continue to be investigated or resolved through those respective processes. Passing this bylaw tonight, which is in general consistency with previous housekeeping amendments, resolves delays in obtaining zoning compliance where a number of where the identified issues or properties are affected. Now, as noted in my report, I promised that an alternate recommendation could be provided to council if public comment was received. That has in fact happened. We have 1 comment with respect to garage projections and a 2nd comment that came in this morning with respect to the framework for balconies and uncovered platforms. I note that feedback has been received, and as such, The affected clauses have been deleted from bylaw 2015-018 before you tonight, and those issues may be further reviewed, or will be further reviewed rather, and may be brought back forward to council for consideration at a future date. At the same time, an additional technical issue was identified with respect to identifying the front lot lines on certain lots. The specific incident that came to our attention actually affects about 200 or so lots throughout the town. So to correct the intent of that definition, there's a series of tweaks required to 4 definitions and 1 technical correction to an additional site-specific amendment to make this all work out and to help our residents continue moving forward with their plans. So the memorandum from Planning Services dated today, entitled "The Summary of Final Changes to Proposed Bylaw 2015-018, detail each of those changes. And with those modifications made, I can continue to recommend to Council that Bylaw 2015-018 be passed tonight. Your Worship, I'm happy to answer any further questions you may have or to provide further comment should feedback be received from the public.
Thank you, Mr. Nethery. Just before we do that, remind the public how many pages we started with in the old zoning bylaw. 800?
With Your Worship, over 900 with maps.
And it is now?
549.
And you've found all of 45 minor errors. I think you don't have to beat yourself up too hard. I think we're still proud of what staff have done. Council, do you have questions for staff? Councillor Elgar.
Yes, thank you, and thank you very much, Mr. Nethery, for doing what you're doing here with the zoning. I just want to make sure, from your point of view, you're sure there are no material changes, such as any changes in height, cube size of the building allowed, or anything like that could impact residents in the area?
Through you, Your Worship, in my opinion, no. There are no substantive changes to that effect.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate the complexity of the process. I guess my concern is moving forward. Is it now clean? I understand the lot lines and the balcony that was before us. Any other corrections that you think will be coming forward? My concern is that once it's signed off, that it's clean and we've caught everything.
Through you, Your Worship, I share that same concern, not just for pride of ownership, but the fact is that we all want that clean bylaw to work with on a go-forward basis. I can do my best Donald Rumsfeld impression that there are always unknown unknowns. And with respect to remaining knowns that need to be corrected in this bylaw, without wanting to go into too much detail about it, there are matters that we can look at it through the Ontario Municipal Board process. So, kind of.
So if there were any others identified, have you finished going through it now, or is it still in progress, or is this as clean as we can expect it to be at this point?
Through Your Worship, it's as clean as we can expect it to be at this point. There do remain a couple of issues. The Ontario Municipal Board process kind of holds us back in terms of what I'm comfortable recommending Council pass at this time, that staff continue to monitor and will bring forward at an appropriate time when it does come up.
I understand. Thanks.
Commissioner, did you have an answer to that particular question?
I just wanted to add, Mr. Nethery is correct. He's gone through the bylaw as it stands right now. But I wanted to just remind you that on almost an annual basis, we bring through a housekeeping bylaw just to clean things up. So as you work through building permits and the rest of it, you find pieces in the bylaw that may not jive together. So as Joe said, we think we have it all, but we usually do an annual housekeeping bylaw amendment coming forward.
Translation, we've never been perfect. But we're more perfect now than we were before. Councillor Dumoff.
Thank you for these. I had a question about the mapping changes, and maybe you could give us a little more information on those. My only concern is that someone thinks they were in one zone and now we're saying their zoning is different. So what kind of changes have you made with regard to mapping errors?
Through Your Worship, two of these, Well, I can speak to two of the mapping changes proposed very specifically, where the property owner thought they were in the different zone that they actually weren't. So two of these changes actually bring the properties into compliance, for lack of a better word, with the zoning that they thought they had, and in staff's opinion they should have. Another one of them, to seize upon your worship, one of your points, is correcting a mapping error that's existed for a number of decades in the Trafalgar Chartwell area that happened to come up while we were doing some other auditing. So we're finally correcting that long-running split zoning of a lot where now the regulations will be unified for the entire 2 lots that are affected. 2 other changes, actually, and the remaining 3 changes are all related to text amendments as well, where new special provisions are being proposed at this time. They were special provisions that we missed in the original passage of 2014. The mapping changes are necessary to capture those changes as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? A motion? Oh. Mr. Cheeseman. Mr. Cheeseman has submissions.
In your worship, members of council, my name is Russ Cheeseman. I'm the solicitor for a number of appellants to 2014-014, and I've been involved in that process now for some time. I'm here to go on the record to say I was here this evening addressing you, and I'm going to hand up a document with all of my clients on it for the clerks. I won't bother reading them into the record. I think I got 10 or 12 or something like that nature. My concern tonight in speaking to this bylaw that's before you, I can say that one of the items, and I haven't seen the latest memo that was handed up to you. That's new. But as of 5:10 tonight, we were told that there would be some changes to the bylaw to alleviate some of my clients' concerns with respect to certain provisions of the bylaw that have been pulled back, for want of a better word, from me tonight. And I understand what the town is trying to do in terms of coming forward with a housekeeping bylaw. They did it once before on 2014-014. They did it through notice and to all of the parties at the hearing. My concern tonight is twofold. One is I've got a number of clients who are still going over this bylaw, looking at all of the implications of the changes of the words to make sure that they don't affect their appeals. And in the normal course, I might say if this was dealt with before the Ontario Municipal Board, the board would deal with it, and if there were minor corrections to be made, the board obviously has the power to make those minor corrections and solve the problem in the long run. The concern that I have now is that we just came through a process where the town moved to have partial approval of the zoning bylaw put in place before the board, brought a motion. There was a lot of paper that went back and forth, but basically on consent of all the parties at the hearing, a portion of 2014-014 is coming to effect, and the board has put out an order allowing that to happen, but also to reserving the jurisdiction in itself over 2014, those parts that are approved, to further modify them if it turns out that somewhere down the road during the course of the Ontario Municipal Board hearing, in order to solve some appeal that's before the board, something may have to be tweaked. And everybody understands that. My concern tonight is you're passing a housekeeping bylaw now to tweak 2014-014. That bylaw, this bylaw, isn't going to be before the Ontario Municipal Board. So it would not be caught by the wording of the board order in terms of the jurisdiction it's reserving to make sure that things run smoothly. I'm not up here to complain about the way staff has conducted themselves. Mr. Nethery is doing an amazing job. I'm not here to deal with perfection. It's a big job. It's a lot of clauses in this bylaw that he's dealing with. And my concern is I don't want something to get missed inadvertently and not be able to deal with. So I want to go on record to say I've got a concern about you passing a housekeeping amendment to amend the bylaw and the effect that that might have on the jurisdiction of the board on the appeal of 2014-014 in order to keep with the spirit of the agreement that everybody has in the room, that nothing is going to interfere with getting the thing right at the end once the hearing is resolved. So I'm here going on record for all of my clients to say that. One of my clients' group of companies, Melrose, dealt with Mr. Nethery. Mr. Nethery made the amendments. They've been very cooperative in trying to make sure that nothing gets missed. My concern is that something might get missed. And as of 10 after 5 tonight, I probably wasn't coming. But at the last moment when this arose, I felt it was my duty as a solicitor to stand up and reserve all my clients' rights, basically to speak here, go on the record, and I'll have another 20 days or whatever it is, if you choose to pass this bylaw tonight, to go over it and ensure that we haven't got a problem. And if we do, we can appeal it and get the right provisions before the board. So that's why I'm here tonight.
Thank you very much. You've given us 2 reasons to proceed, which may or may not have been your intention. One is you reminded us that your clients have their appeal rights intact. And the other was the first point, which is the board has retained jurisdiction over even the approved parts. And so should a contradiction arise, there's actually another avenue, it seems to me, through that mechanism.
And the only concern I have, sir, is I don't want to appeal something for the sake of appealing it. Nobody wants that.
And because of your first point, you may not even need to.
Well, that may be true, but if there's something in this bylaw that we miss, the board wouldn't have jurisdiction to deal with an amendment to that to the parent bylaw that you moved tonight, because that bylaw is not the bylaw that's before the board.
Okay.
That's my concern.
What we're not hearing is a compelling reason to wait, because you haven't identified any difficulty.
We did identify difficulty, and to the staff's credit, they reacted to it and caught it. I'm just worried that there might be something else there.
Exactly. That's right. So I thank you for all 3 of those points.
Right.
All right.
All right.
Any questions for Mr. Cheeseman? Mr. Cheeseman, thank you very much for bringing us those points.
Thank you.
Madam Close, okay. All right. Any other members of the public with information for council on this revised recommendation that bylaw 2015 well,
my name is Clive Martin. I live in Dorothy. I have one quick question, first of all, regarding 2015-018, because that's the first time I've heard that reference. And maybe the question is through you, sir, to Joe Nethery, is 2015-018.
would you assist everyone to understand you and be able to answer your question by just addressing your question a little more toward the microphone?
Sure. Is
Thank
that better?
A million times better.
Okay, sorry about that. My question is through you, sir, to Joe Nethery. Is 2015-018 compatible, consistent with OPA 4?
Mr. Nethery, is your bylaw consistent with OPA 4?
Through your worship, in my opinion, yes, it is.
Thank you for that. Then I just have, I hesitate somewhat to bring this forward, but it may be just a typo, but it's in relation to Special Provision 24, which applies to 3 pieces of land on the northwest corner of Trafalgar and East Street. And Special Provision 24 applies to all 3 properties, but in the map, the reference to Special Provision 24 is only applied to 2 of those properties, and not to the 3rd property, which is zoned separately as a, I think, existing development. Based on my understanding of the map, the reference to Special Provision 24 should also be applied to that property on the map, to be consistent with the rest of the bylaw and with the living Oakville plan.
Mr. Nethery, has Mr. Martin, is it?
Yes, it is.
Has Mr. Martin helped you, or can you help him?
Through your worship, I'm hoping I can continue to help Mr. Martin, because we have had a number of discussions over the course of the in-zone project. I do see the discrepancy that he is referring to. However, I believe the issue may result in the addressing that's provided in the text of the bylaw. This zoning bylaw 2014 has the ability to correct that heading when we prepare consolidations on a frequent basis. I believe the mapping is okay, and maybe it's best to speak with Mr. Martin after this presentation to discuss that in detail.
Just to clarify, are you proposing any changes to Special Provision 24?
Through your worship, there are no changes to the text of Special Provision 24 proposed.
Or the heading?
Potentially to the heading, but I think that's a discussion better held off stream from this tonight.
Okay, what's the process then for resolving that? If we talk about that and there's an issue, how is that going to affect the passing of this bylaw?
Through you, your worship, the property that Mr. Martin has in question is zoned existing development. That property is limited to the height and the uses that exist today, except for a 10% expansion in floor area. The size of the building on this site's maybe generously about 500 square feet, so a 50 square foot addition would be permitted as of right. Special Provision 24 provides a height maximum of 8.2 meters, or a roughly 2-story building, which does not exist on the site that's zoned existing development today. In order for the property zoned existing development today to get the taller building, they are going to be required to obtain a zoning bylaw amendment. Not to jeopardize, prejudice, or forecast that, but I imagine that zoning bylaw amendment would probably look at expanding the special provision on the mapping to apply to the property at that time. So, in other words, in my opinion, there is currently a lesser height limit today on the property zoned existing development than what Special Provision 24 provides as of right. In order to obtain that additional height, they will require a public process, including notification to you and your neighbors.
That is a very satisfactory explanation.
I thought he was very clear.
I thought he did very well. Yes.
All right, well, thank you very much for bringing those questions, and I'm pleased that we were able to get to some understanding there.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I'm looking really carefully for hands this time, even shy ones, and I'm still not seeing any. So I'll now look for a motion. Councillor Duddick, are you giving us the revised motion?
I am indeed.
That bylaw 2015-18, a bylaw to make a number of housekeeping and technical corrections to zoning bylaw 2014-14 be passed as amended in accordance with the memorandum dated March 9th, 2015 from the Planning and Services Department. All in favor? Opposed? And that carries. And thank you one and all for everyone's assistance in that public hearing. Council, we now come to our first discussion item, agenda item number 5, and this is the recommendation report, the draft plan of condominium for Peppergate Developments, 2420 Beringwood Drive. And do you have another delegation sheet?
No, I don't.
Mr. Barrette is back for the same purpose as before.
Your Worship, I don't need, and Councillor Lapworth doesn't need a presentation unless the rest of council does or anyone in the audience. I'm not sure.
Are there any members of the public here with information for council on this file? Are there any members of the public here with a need to see Mr. Barrette's summary of the reports? Mr. Barrette, do you have a burning need to give your summary?
No, I do not.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barrette, for being available. Councillor Elgar.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. When I note that the zoning bylaws, this development meets the zoning bylaws, both the 1984 and the 2014 bylaw, and I'd be willing to move this because we have a very big hole in the ground up there now, so it's, you know it's going to get built. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that also carries. That brings us to item number 6 on the agenda, the second discussion item, and that item number 6 is the notice of intention to demolish 573 Lakeshore Road West. And the recommendation is that a notice of intention to designate for the property at 573 Lakeshore Road West, known as the Acacias, be issued. And for the benefit of the public, the way a notice of intention to demolish works is it gives council its last chance to designate a property we believe to be of heritage value. And the alternative is to receive the notice and let it go. Mr. Hanna, you have indicated that you may have some information for council on this file, and we are ready for your information.
Certainly, Your Worship. I can make a, we've lost the, there we go, we're back. I have a very quick presentation on this matter. As you correctly identified, we've received a notice of intention to demolish for 573 Lakeshore Road West. The property in question is located on the northerly side of Lakeshore, just to the east of 4th Line and across from the Appleby College. Just a little bit of background information for council. The property is listed on the Heritage Register. As you pointed out, it's known as the Acacius House. It was put there in 2007 on the register for its circa 1910 residence, which has a arts and crafts flavor and a Tudor revival influence. My understanding, again, Sue Shepard has been the heritage planner that's been dealing with this particular matter. The notice of intention to demolish was received by the current owners more so to put some certainty on the matter, because they don't intend to demolish the house, but they are trying to sell the property, and there's been some uncertainty with property owners, which they consider as a hindrance. So my understanding is, again, they would like to have the matter resolved one way or the other. Here are some photos of the residence from years past, 1981 and 1992, and you'll notice that it really hasn't changed a lot. It's a very wonderful looking home, well maintained. And here's a few shots around the property, just for the information of council. Very quickly, when staff did its review of this particular application, we found that there were merits to designate the property under the Ontario Heritage Act, both from a physical, historical, and contextual perspective. I won't go into details. But the property itself, known as the Acacia, was known for its trees and how the house was actually sited on the dwelling and respecting the surrounding landscape. So that's a very interesting component of this particular situation. We also, just for a bit of background, we did an update of the register in 2013, and a number of properties were removed from that register at the time. This was not one of them, because we felt, again, it merited consideration as a designated property, and that's the conclusion that we've reached. So the recommendation in front of you tonight is that the notice of intention to designate be issued for the property.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Council, do you have questions? Councillor Duddick.
I don't have any questions, Your Worship, but I'll give you a motion to approve unless the owners wanted to come forward. I know they're in attendance this evening. I just had a few comments other than that.
Thank you. Would you like to do that? Council welcomes you and looks forward to your comments.
I was once before because, Your Worship, the garage that was on our property was actually listed as a barn. So we had it rectified, and so I've been here once before on a little matter. This is a more serious matter. We came to Oakville in the early part of the 21st century, and we bought the property. We very much liked the house. We've had nothing but older houses which we renovated in the process of our life. And so this was another one. It was very attractive to us, and we wanted to come to Oakville because we have 2 daughters here and all our grandchildren are here in Oakville. So, but we got hit with this listing situation, which wasn't at the time when we purchased the property, which came as a real shock, because all of a sudden it meant that we don't own this property anymore outright. And quite frankly, I was chairing the what do you call it, the Heritage Council in Mono Township, which is up in Huckley Valley, for quite a few years. And so I know what goes into trying to acquire or list a house or designate a house. But when we had to do it, we had to go and sell the people that owned the property on the fact of maintaining it and keeping it up as a heritage piece. And so anyway, that's why I got a bit of a shock when this happened. And actually, our property wasn't listed on the first listing that was there, which came out in 2007, I think. It wasn't actually on there, so it must have been added on later. But we had no formal advice that this was so. Now, we are getting on in time, and we have this big house, 3-story. We have a big property. It's nearly 0.7 acre, and we feel that the time has come that we have to pass it on to somebody else. So even if the house wouldn't be or would be listed, it is listed, and this would be used, or let's say this would be taken off in a way, I think the house would never be destroyed anyway. So somebody else will take it, but it would serve our purpose of selling the property much better, because we had the property for sale for 2 years. We didn't have a single offer, and the real estate people advised us that many people liked it very much and were willing to buy it, but this listing came up, which the real estate people had to tell their clients, and they just dropped it like a hot potato. So this is my story, and whatever happens, happens, but I gave you my opinion on the matter.
Thank you very much for sharing it with us. Before you go, are there any questions for? All right, thank you very much, sir. Councillor Duddick?
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to give you a motion to approve the staff recommendation and the Oakville Heritage Committee's recommendation to designate the property. Now I know why I've always liked it when I see all the research that was provided in regards to this particular site. And I do hope it gives some certainty in terms of the owners of the property. I do recall, as does my colleague, Councillor Giddings, when they came forward in regards to the request to demolish the, or have the garage rather removed from the register or the properties of interest, and we accommodated that at that time. But like I say, this is a beautiful piece of property, and we hope we can move forward, and hopefully someone else will come to enjoy it as much as the current owners have. And thank you so much for your stewardship for it all these years. Beautiful, beautiful property. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Other discussion? It's duly moved by Councillor Duddick. All those in favour? Opposed, if any? That carries. The next item is item number 7 on the agenda, the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage Conservation District Study. And the recommendation is that the report before you be endorsed. Mr. Hanna, are you back up?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I am. On behalf of Sue Shepard, who is unfortunately ill this evening, and I'm very pleased to provide an update on our ongoing study to update the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage Conservation District. The purpose this evening, Your Worship and Council, is to hopefully get your endorsement on the Heritage Assessment Report, which is attached to the report and forms part of the recommendation. With me this evening, I just wanted to introduce a young lady by the name of Sarah Corey. She is with FGMDA Architects. There's Sarah, and they have been retained to assist us with this endeavor, and they've been working with us since the fall of last year. As noted in your report, the actual Heritage Assessment Report is attached as Appendix A, and it outlines the history of the district and inventories the properties and streetscapes. It has a number of different components. It looks at the physiographic context and historic settlement of the area. It inventories and provides details on the built heritage and landscape character. It looks at the policies, as an example, livable Oakville and our new zoning bylaw, which control development in the area. And it also provides an outline of the objectives for the plan when it is updated. Just to give you a little bit of background, the original Heritage Conservation District was passed by bylaw in 1989. The actual district plan, though, did not come into effect until several years later in 1991. So properties within the area have been subject to the plan and guidelines since that time. There are 66 properties, primarily residential. I believe there's one park space owned by the town within the district itself. The interesting thing, and the reason we've put the Ontario Heritage Act update in this particular slide presentation, is that as much as it provided provisions for establishing new heritage conservation districts, there is actually no provisions specifically that talk about a process to update heritage conservation districts. So we have gone on the safe side and we've said we should follow the same process that you do for a new district. So that's the reason why we're dealing with the assessment report this evening. The district itself was formed around two particular surveys that were established back as early as 1855, the Romaine and Smith surveys. And within the Heritage Assessment Report, our consultants have done a fantastic job, and I'm going to show you in a second some colorful images of how the area has evolved over time. And they've come up with four main periods of construction, the first being kind of the 1850 to 1900, the estate houses being established. Then from the 1900s to the 1930s, it became very good for folks in the Metro Toronto area at the time to come and have cottages and other summer estates in Oakville, and there were several smaller cottages and residences established at that time. There was the post-war construction, and we call it the densification time period, when properties were actually severed and additional residents created. And then, as we called the last period, the 1991 to present, and that's when the conservation and redevelopment took place in accordance with the current plan and guidelines. So when I speak to the colorful components that form part of the assessment report, here's a kind of a visual of those four construction periods, the first in blue, second in kind of the greenish color, and then the orange and the red. I'm not going to go into detail on the assessment report, but just give you kind of snippets of it. Then we look at the various architectural styles within the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage Conservation District, and there's a number of them. I'm not going to go into all of them, but there's a whole flavor of different architectural styles. And there is height, everything from 1 story to 2.5 stories, some of them more congregated in certain areas than others, but the height is generally 1 story to 2.5 stories. The assessment report itself, again, just to conclude, it provides objectives for the actual plan and guideline when it is updated, so it will inform that update. It makes a recommendation for new plan content, and I use one example. Currently, the plan has a category 1, 2, and 3 component to it, 1 being the most significant to 3 being the least significant, and that has proven to have been some problems over time in determining changes that are made to properties, including demolitions. The Ontario Heritage Act has gone to more of a contributing versus non-contributing terminology, contributing being very much a heritage resource and non-contributing being not so much of a heritage resource. And that's kind of the flavor that you might see in the new plan update. There are changes that could be required to municipal legislation to ensure conformity with the district plan. The assessment report doesn't recommend any at this particular time, but through the public review process, we may come up with some at the end of the day. And there are a number of appendices which form part of the assessment report. The actual property inventory we didn't include because it is so thick. I think we made it available to council, but I'll show you some snippets of that. The appendices also include a streetscape inventory and an architectural style guide. So every property within the district has a very colorful inventory sheet now going into various design and physical details of the particular residence, site features, how it's landscaped and paved, etc., whether it's on a corner lot or interior lot, and also some historical details on when it was constructed, who the architect might have been, things like that, and where it is contextually in the area. There's also inventory streets relating to the public realm, and this is just the example of how First Street is described with, you know, paved sidewalks, grass boulevard, et cetera, et cetera. It's not the more urban contemporary subdivision look. It's very much a rural kind of a feel. And this is just a snippet of some of the guides dealing with the architectural styles that you would see in the area, this one featuring the Georgian revival. So where we are in the process this evening, Your Worship, is we're asking Council to endorse the Heritage Assessment Report. It was presented the other day to your Heritage Oakville Committee, and it was fully supported by the committee at that time. We are ongoing with a fairly extensive public process as well, dealing with the update to the plan and guideline. Just the other day, we had focus group sessions with not only the residents in the area, but also the professionals that deal with the current plan and guidelines, and that was on March 3rd. Picked a wonderful day during the snow, sleet, hail, whatever else was falling down, but we actually had reasonable attendance, so I thank the residents of Oakville for coming out. Following the first set of focus group meetings, we indicated that we'd be preparing a draft of the new plan and guidelines that should probably be available by middle of April, and we, at that point, intend to have further stakeholder involvement, and there could be additional modifications made to the draft plan and guidelines at that time. Our overall game plan is to bring back a new plan and guidelines following the summer season, hopefully September, October of this year. So our recommendation this evening is that the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage Conservation District update, the Heritage Assessment Report dated February 15th, be endorsed. And as I mentioned at the beginning, if you have any technical questions, we have one of our consultants here this evening, and I can try my best.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna, for such a calm and clear report. And Councillor Hutchins, did you have questions or concerns?
Really, no, I just wanted to, if nobody had any questions, I wanted to move to endorse the report.
Thank you, Councillor Hutchins. You will have that honor, but first we will have questions from Councillor Dudek.
No questions, just wanted to support Councillor Hutchins in moving this and commending staff for a huge undertaking. I know that Councillor Giddings, having dealt with this issue in this area, not only the residents, but those abutting the area who've always been very, very protective of the district, have been clamoring for this for some time. So the fact we're moving ahead with this, that's just great. Thanks for all your hard work.
Are there any members of the public with information for council on this matter? Then, Councillor Hutchins, your motion is in order, and I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Yes. So now, council, we have two economic development items, 8 and 9, before us. And under the procedure bylaw, I enjoy a tiny privilege of changing the order of agenda where I think it makes sense. And with your agreement, we perhaps should hear the Economic Development Annual Report first at the request of staff, and then go to the Economic Development Strategy Progress Report, because in a temporal sense, it makes more sense to go in that order. And so therefore, I'll call item number 9, and Ms. St. George, who is going to be speaking to this? Ms. Allison Newton.
No, actually, for
Nope.
the annual report, it's Rebekah Stormes, who is our Marketing and Research Officer.
I should have stuck with just asking you. Anyway, we're now ready.
Great. Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. It's a pleasure to present to you the 2014 annual report from our Economic Development Department. Our annual report is again brimming with lots of great news about Oakville's business community. Tonight, my presentation will cover 2014 development, some company highlights, and Oakville's competitive position relative to our neighbors. Following my presentation, you'll hear from Allison Newton, who will provide an update regarding the economic development strategy, our various initiatives designed to promote business retention, expansion, and attraction, as well as a glimpse of what's coming up in 2015. So before I dive into the content of the report, I wanted to touch quickly on the theme of this year's report, which is innovation. In 2014, we held the first Oakville Innovation Awards, and throughout the year, we heard a lot of stories about our local companies finding success through innovation, research and development, and through synergies and partnerships with other Oakville companies. We felt the annual report was a good opportunity to celebrate that innovative business environment that already exists here in Oakville, and to recognize that it's the success of our existing business community that breeds more success and is what continues to make Oakville a priority destination for business. So jumping in now, this chart provides a listing of new and expanding businesses in 2014. Please note that the chart includes the total number of employees at each business, not the increase in employment. So in total, new and expanding businesses on this list accounted for over 1,700 jobs in 2014. With the exception of the Ford Canada announcement, all of these companies are new to Oakville. So obviously the biggest announcement in 2014 was Ford's, that they'd be adding 1,000 new jobs to the Oakville assembly plant for the production of the 2015 Ford Edge crossover SUV for global markets. Production kicked off recently, and it was announced that there's actually going to be an additional 400 jobs this year. So at the time we sent the report to print, the employment estimate we had from Ford was 4,950, but at the press conference a few weeks ago, it was announced the number is closer to 4,500, which is still up from 3,500 in 2013. We did see some closures during 2014 that we wanted to bring to your attention. The Oakville Xerox plant closed, which resulted in 69 people out of work. And Automodular announced that they would be closing as well, which was a loss of 525 jobs, some of which were absorbed through the hiring process at Ford. So here's a quick look at Oakville's top private sector employers, who combined employ approximately 10,000 workers. We saw some new additions to this list this year. Innomar Strategies, AmerisourceBergen, moved into Oakville, into the Great Lakes Business Park, and brought with them 400 employees. Travelers Canada, who was formerly the Dominion of Canada General Insurance Company and a long-time Oakville company, also moved onto the list. I'd also just like to note that the employment number we have for Tim Hortons was what we had previously on file in 2014, and we don't have an update on employment numbers since that merger with Burger King. So 2014 was an exciting year for us. I just wanted to show you a few pictures that document some of the changing landscape in Oakville. So here's a new medical office building in the Palermo area. It was completed this summer, and tenants are now occupying that building. The Oakville Hospital is still under construction with substantial completion scheduled for August of this year and the moving date scheduled for December of this year. Right next door to that, we have a 4-story medical office building currently under construction. This is a pretty recent picture, so that shows where they're at now. I also wanted to point out the Oakwoods Business Park has started development. This is a 42-acre business park located between Upper Middle Road and the QEW at 9th Line, where the former Oakville Family Golf Center was located. The new development will offer a mix of office, high-profile industrial, and retail opportunities, and is currently going through the approvals process. The iFly grand opening was held in July of 2014 and attended by Mayor Burton, members of council, and staff. You might recognize the flyers in these pictures. Our own Councillor Adam and Councillor Khan took the plunge to demonstrate the experience for everyone at the grand opening. So just a thanks to iFly for giving us those great photos. So moving on to the company profiles that you'll see in the report. This year we decided that rather than focus only on new business, we wanted to profile some of our existing companies. Oakville is home to a lot of pretty excellent companies, but a lot of them maintain a low profile. We might drive by them every day without necessarily realizing the innovation and R&D that's taking place behind their doors. We felt it was important to recognize those companies and the role that they play in growing our economy and providing high-quality jobs to our residents. So first up you see here is UTC Aerospace, formerly Goodrich Landing Gear. They celebrated 30 years in Oakville in 2014. They're our second largest private sector employer with almost 900 employees, and they operate one of the most advanced test facilities for aerospace landing systems in North America. We actually had the privilege of doing a site visit this fall, and while touring the plant, they showed us a full-size 3D model of landing gear, and it was the first time they've ever used that in their design and development. None of us had ever seen a model that big, and it was actually too big to take a decent picture of it. We couldn't get all the way up, but we were so impressed to see this Oakville company using this innovative technology and really leading the world in design and development, and that's why we wanted to feature them for you. So the next company that we profiled was Geotab. They were named one of the 50 fastest growing technology companies in Canada in 2014 by Deloitte. And they also received one of 5 Deloitte Technology Fast 50 Leadership Awards, cementing them as one of the leaders in Canada's technology industry. In fact, Geotrap attracted the attention of International Trade Minister Ed Fast, who toured the company last week while he was in Oakville to host a workshop. So they're a leader in the area of GPS fleet management, offering premium quality end-to-end telematics technology. They focus all their effort on R&D, and they're continuously adding new patents to their profile. They've seen their revenue grow by 187% since 2009, and employment grow to over 100 staff, not including production. So as the company continues to grow, they've said that they want to continue to grow here in Oakville. And their CEO even commented to us that their goal is to attract some of the brightest engineering minds to Oakville to work for them. So the last company that we profiled in the report is a new one. Innomar Strategies, AmerisourceBergen, is a consulting firm in the pharma and biotech markets, and they landed here in Oakville in October of 2014. They were previously located next door in Burlington, and they moved their Canadian head office with 400 jobs into Great Lakes Business Park, with their pharmacy and distribution center staying in Burlington. So one of the things that struck us the most about this company was their commitment to developing their corporate culture and their high employee satisfaction. For example, when they undertook the move here to Oakville, their employees were given the opportunity to name the meeting rooms, which now include the penalty box and the Timbit. They also have a purple cow, as you can see in the picture here, who they've named Ameribelle, and they use her to recognize their employees' contributions. So when somebody has done something good or particularly noteworthy, they might just end up with a giant cow in their cubicle the next morning. And those ladies had too much fun with that cow when we took that picture. So moving back to some of the numbers, the graphs that you see here show the construction value of all commercial building permits issued from 2008 to 2014. The overall trend we're seeing here is growth in commercial building permit activity since the low you see in 2009. 2014 saw the highest construction value for commercial building permit activity in the past 7 years. At over $148 million, the 2014 figure is above the 7-year average, which is approximately $94 million. And of that 148, 105 was actually new construction. So some major developments this year included 4 new office or medical office buildings, which accounted for almost $60 million in construction value, as well as 4 new parking structures, which accounted for $23 million. The other major permit issued was for a new supermarket. I'd also like to point out the spike that you see in 2011, and it should be noted that this included the $43 million cost to build the GO Transit parking garage, and it was a substantial portion of the activity that year. So here's essentially the same chart, only for industrial development. As you can see, at $237 million, 2014 was a pretty big outlier year for us. This is almost entirely due to the permits issued for the Mid-Halton wastewater treatment plant on North Service Road, which accounted for about 95% of the permit construction values. The other outlier you see here, although it looks small because of 2014, was the year 2010, and the major driver behind that increase was the construction of the Oakville Transit Facility, which was $45 million. So aside from those 2 years, industrial activity is fairly consistent, but it's been low since 2008. So this graph shows the annual square footage of new construction only. You can see in general, over the past few years, we've been seeing an increase in square footage of commercial development and a bit of a decrease in square footage for industrial. In 2011, the spike there that you see in commercial square footage was due to the developments by First Gulf, that's the Siemens building on North Service Road, Paul's property with the Great Lakes Business Park on Superior Court, and Carterra's Joshua Creek Phase 1. 2012, you see a bit of a dip, which was when a lot of those buildings were actually being filled. And then in 2013, we saw an increase again, but this time it was not necessarily focused on office, but more on other commercial, such as retails and restaurants. And then in 2014, over 440,000 square feet of new development was office, and over 320,000 square feet was for parking. In terms of industrial, the majority of what you see, over 100,000 square feet, was again due to the Mid-Halton wastewater treatment plant. So I'm going to talk quickly about our competitive position. In the report, you'll find a comparison of Oakville with 17 other municipalities in the GTA with regards to 3 major cost factors that investors consider in their site selection analysis, that being taxes, land values, and development charges. I'm not going to go into detail in these because you have them in your reports, but rather I just want to provide a quick snapshot comparing these factors for Oakville with our neighbors Burlington and Mississauga. So these graphs combine those three front-end cost factors in a typical scenario for a 150,000 square foot office building, which you see in green, and similarly for an 80,000 square foot manufacturing facility in blue. And you'll see the total costs for each of Oakville, Burlington, and Mississauga. So when compared to our neighbors, Oakville is in the middle of the spectrum in both commercial and industrial scenarios. Mississauga is most expensive, and Burlington is the least expensive. So just to highlight a couple of the initiatives that our department was involved in during 2014. Despite the first snowstorm of the season, we did have a great turnout for our first Oakville Innovation Awards hosted by the town in partnership with Haltech, the Oakville Chamber of Commerce, the Oakville Chapter of the Professional Engineers of Ontario, and Silicon Halton. And this event was sponsored by PwC and Siemens. So the awards were created to recognize those companies that have developed exceptional products or processes that exhibit leading-edge R&D. But the awards were also created to provide an opportunity for local companies to learn about the work others are doing and potentially create synergies amongst each other. We know that some of these companies have connected and are collaborating with each other, and we're excited to be a part of building a business community that grows through innovation and collaboration. We had an excellent judging panel, which included experts in the field of technology, engineering, finance, academia, and R&D. The panel reviewed all submissions and selected 6 to be honored. Those were Alfora Research Inc., ATS Biotech Inc., Cinema Suite Inc., GTR Energy Limited, Maps BI Inc., which you can see the Maps BI team there in the photo, and Rendezvous Mobile received an honorable mention. Just want to thank Sheridan for both emceeing the event and for their creativity in designing the beautiful awards. So our work continued with the Ontario Auto Mayors, and the town hosted the Ontario Auto Mayors Stakeholders Summit in June of 2014 to continue discussions on the role of municipal government in attracting and sustaining auto investment. In February of this year, the town of Oakville and the Automotive Policy Research Centre at McMaster University were recognized at the Economic Development Council of Ontario's annual conference for our work on the Auto Mayors initiatives, receiving an award for regionalism and cross-border collaboration. So we were involved with a number of initiatives with the BIAs in order to boost the economic environment in our Main Street commercial districts. In Bronte, a toolkit was developed as part of their business action plan to provide readily available information to potential investors. In downtown Oakville, an economic analysis was completed by J.C. Williams Group, and work has commenced on the development of retail strategies for both downtown and Kerr Village. And in the summer, pilot projects were introduced in all of the BIAs, including patios, outdoor displays, and an ambassador program. The Oakville Tourism Partnership has secured some RTO funding to match the town's contribution to the ambassador program for 2015, should it be approved through the budget process. So in closing, 2014 was another exciting year for Oakville. We saw growth in our office development, welcomed new companies, and celebrated those companies that are already innovating and pushing the boundaries in their respective fields. As we move forward in 2015, we focus on continuing to support and build the business environment in Oakville that makes us so attractive to new companies and makes our existing companies want to stay and grow here. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stormes. Are there questions? Thank you very much, then. Council, a motion to receive would be in order. Councillor Knoll, thank you for that. All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that carries. And now, Ms. Newton. Forward into the future.
I am having a technical difficulty here. Perfect. The mouse doesn't seem to be working. Oh, of course it does now. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council. I'll try not to be too redundant because some of this is going to cover what Rebekah just spoke about. But the Economic Development Strategy, as background, was approved in 2009, and we last provided an update to council in 2013. The strategy was always anticipated to be a fluid document that would adapt with changes in the local environment and the economy. The council report is very detailed, and the appendix attached provides specific status on our ongoing initiatives, For the purposes of this presentation tonight, I'd like to focus on the accomplishments of the past 2 years and really focus on the new factors which has resulted in adjustments to our tactics and the next steps for our department. As you're aware, staff developed a strategy for Oakville based on 4 key sectors: advanced manufacturing, professional and financial services, digital media and animation, and life sciences. When established in 2009, the strategy set out a number of desired outcomes, such as expansion of Oakville's existing business base, more companies in our target sectors, and an adequate supply of shovel-ready employment land to meet demand. The department has continued to make progress on the key outcomes expected and has had a number of notable achievements. Since the strategy was approved, there have been more than 3.5 million square feet of new office development in Oakville. Of particular note are the regional and national office consolidations that have taken place in the past 2 years, including Manulife Securities, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Innomar Strategies, AmerisourceBergen, Peter Kiewit Infrastructure, and TD Wealth Management. These investments have brought a significant number of new jobs and opportunities to Oakville, along with the other major expansions, including Ford's investment that alone added 1,000 new jobs in 2014. We've also been strengthening our ongoing relationships with the local business and development community. The Bronte Business Action Plan, led by the town's Economic Development Department, was initiated to further Bronte's economic development and urban revitalization. Staff, in partnership with the Automotive Policy Research Centre at McMaster University and Ford Canada, hosted a series of events for the Ontario automakers in 2013 and 2014. The resulting recommendations presented at the Automakers Summit will continue to be implemented throughout 2015. The RBC Canadian Open event has presented an exceptional opportunity to showcase Oakville's investment opportunities and strengthen our relationships with the greater real estate and development community. Staff leveraged the event for business attraction in 2008, 2009, and 2013, and will plan a similar initiative for this year. The Oakville China Opportunities Forum was held in 2013 and ultimately led to the development of the Oakville China Business Association, whom you met at a recent council meeting. And finally, in 2014, the Economic Development Department, in cooperation with local partners, hosted the first annual Oakville Innovation Awards to celebrate technology and engineering excellence throughout the Oakville community. The event received very positive feedback from the business community and has led to the decision to expand the event regionally going forward. You may remember when our strategy was created, it won the RBC Achievement of the Year Award from the National Economic Development Organization. We continue to win awards. Over the past 2 years, the department has been recognized with 4 awards for initiatives related to the economic development strategy, 1 international, 1 national, and 2 on the provincial level. As we go into the 5th year of implementation for the strategy, staff has identified a number of changes in the local market and many additional stakeholders added to the field. Recognizing the impact of this changing landscape, staff has evaluated progress and priorities and the need to adapt in order to best meet the needs of our business community. I'm going to talk a little bit about the factors that have changed since approval of the strategy and the initiatives we have implemented to address them. First off, the competitive landscape in the manufacturing sector has shifted, particularly with the automotive industry. When much of the new investment has been made in Mexico and the southern USA, Oakville is not likely to receive new industrial development, and so the focus for our department will be on sustaining and growing the sector rather than new investment attraction. As previously mentioned, staff will continue to work on implementing recommendations from the 2014 Automakers Summit. We have recently established a working group with economic development offices across the province for this purpose. Oakville has seen and benefited from an increase in regional office consolidations. While companies are going through these consolidations, they are increasingly taking note of the shifting demographics in the workforce and the subsequent demand for more efficient and flexible workplaces. A recent boom in office market development has caused the vacancy rate in Oakville to rise above 14% as of Q4 2014, while also providing an opportunity for Oakville to attract new investment to these modern and adaptable facilities. The focus for 2015 will be on filling this new office space through a targeted investment attraction campaign. Some of the first things you will be seeing as part of this campaign are an Oakville feature in the Canadian Business Journal next month, and we are also exploring an opportunity working with the Globe and Mail. There is an emerging trend globally in innovation districts, geographic areas that combine public, private, educational space and focus on cluster development. These districts speak to the demands of the new workforce generation and promote a compact, sustainable urban environment. Traditionally, employment districts developed as isolated industrial or office parks, accessible only by car, with little thought given to incorporating quality of life with work. Innovation districts change the way we look at the future of our employment areas. Economic development has been working with both the town and regional planning staff to explore new ideas and principles for such employment areas, including the proposed Life Sciences and Technology District adjacent to the new hospital. Work within Oakville's business improvement areas and the retail sector in general was not contemplated originally in the development of the economic development strategy. As these Main Street areas struggled in recent years to attract more traffic, staff provided assistance to the BIAs on retail strategies to help rejuvenate the respective areas. The Bronte Business Action Plan was completed in 2013, and an economic analysis of downtown Oakville was undertaken in 2014. This year, staff will continue working with the BIAs and J.C. Williams Group to complete retail strategies and action plans for Kerr Village and downtown Oakville, and continue to implement the Bronte Business Action Plan. Not surprisingly, there's been a general shift in demand from print to digital or online marketing. Staff will continue to evaluate where and how our marketing dollars are best spent, with a much greater emphasis on digital information than in recent years. One of our initiatives in 2014 was the development of an online e-brochure, which allows staff, site selectors, and investors to quickly and easily choose the information they are looking for and create a customized information brochure in an online or PDF format. Since we first prepared our strategy, some new organizations have arisen. Two of them, based here in Oakville, relate to the digital media sector. Haltech, an organization funded by the province and the region, was established to support and provide services for technology and advanced manufacturing entrepreneurs in Halton. Silicon Halton was created as a grassroots technology community focused on connectivity, advocacy, and growing the sector. As these organizations have emerged and grown in the business community, the Economic Development Department has shifted its role in the digital media and animation sector to monitoring trends and responding to investment leads. Staff will continue to refer companies as needed to these resources and work with them in partnership. The GTMA, for those of you who may not be familiar, is an organization providing business attraction services throughout the Greater Toronto Area. Following lengthy discussions throughout 2014, it was recently announced that the GTMA will transition to a new company named NewCo in 2016. The programming details have yet to be established. However, the intention is to provide expanded programming with increased funding from the regions, the province, and potentially the federal government. The proposed budget of $7.5 million is a significant increase from their current $1.7 million. To date, the province has committed to transitional funding. However, ongoing provincial and federal funding has yet to be confirmed. Halton Region has also indicated its intention to be more involved in investment attraction as we move forward. This puts a significant amount of money being invested by the federal, provincial, GTMA, and regional organizations for investment attraction. So what's the role at the local level? To answer this question, we are looking at the scope of services and target sectors of these various organizations, as well as international attraction initiatives of other municipalities. There is a broad spectrum of involvement at the local level. Some local municipalities are involved directly in international trade missions, while others play a connective role with federal and provincial reps that are operating in the space. In 2015, we will complete an international business development plan. The intention of this plan is to provide a complete analysis of all the work being done by various organizations in the GTA and identify the gaps, if any. This plan will help to determine the role the town should have in foreign direct investment, the degree of involvement we should have, and the associated resources that may be required. Overall, staff believes that the goals and objectives of the strategy are still valid and applicable. In the context of an increasingly competitive and dynamic market, there will be an increased emphasis on attraction initiatives in the professional services sector, as well as the growth of the life sciences sector for the foreseeable future. We will also continue to work on retention and expansion initiatives with our local companies. Staff intends to undertake and present a comprehensive update to the strategy in 2017. Thank you. I'd like to answer any questions.
Thank you. It's a very exciting future that we have for ourselves, I believe, based on our outstanding livability and its key role in attracting business. I love the mention earlier of the company that expects to be able to attract more talent to them as a result of moving here. That's the whole thing in my view. Any questions, Council? A motion, Councillor O'Meara, thank you.
Thank you for that. I had a question about the vacancy rate. You said that it jumped to 14%. What's a comfortable level, or what's a comparative to that number?
Through you, Your Worship. In a healthy market, the vacancy rate would typically sit between 5 and 7%. That would allow some flexibility in the market, as allows opportunities for investment. That's not unexpected, and it's not reason for alarm per se. The market tends to go in cycles like that of an increase in the boom of construction, and then we go through a few years where we're really filling that space. So it's not unusual in a growing community to see a vacancy rate jump as it has done. The key is really for us to be proactive in making sure that we're on top of that number and filling that space as best we can with our community.
So the trend goes more sort of jagged lined? Is that how it works? And or does it flatline out for a bit and then until it fills and then we go up again? Or, I mean, we're talking about creating, building more of these places in Winston Park areas. So I'm just wondering what the trend we should be looking for is.
Through Your Worship, again, we're going to see more of the pronounced spikes because we are growing so rapidly and we are in demand. Most markets are going to see slight fluctuations. Again, with the boom that we've been seeing, it's not unusual, and it provides, as we see it, an opportunity to leverage the demand that we're seeing in the market. So we are likely for the foreseeable future to see those spikes come approximately every 3 to 5 years. And then again, we have proactive measures in place to make sure that we bring it back to a healthy rate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Meara, would you give us a motion to receive?
I certainly will.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that is received. Thank you very much, Ms. Newton, and thank you to all of the fine people working on our economic development. We might not be happy about population development, but I think we're all proud of economic development. Council, you have before you the advisory committee minutes from Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee from February 24th. Councillor Duddick. Council, they're moved. You all have them. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? And those are received. Now, on the evening tomorrow, we will do 11, 12, and 13. We will rise and report to council then. But we have a confidential item somewhere here. Ah, here it is, C3. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have it's confidential, but I believe at this point we can read it out in public. So I would like to read this motion out, the resolution. Whereas the Livable Oakville Plan in section 28.1.1 states zoning bylaws may be more restrictive than the official plan, and that it not be intended that the full range of uses or densities permitted by the official plan will be permitted in all locations. And whereas the town's new comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 passed by council on February the 25th, 2014 was deemed partially enforced by an order of the Ontario Municipal Board dated February the 23rd, 2015, and whereas no appeal was filed of zoning bylaw 2014-14 with respect to the subject property, and whereas the new bylaw zoned the southerly portion of the property that is the subject of zoning bylaw amendment 1430.13 as RM1, which has a height limit of 3 stories and only permits townhouses dwellings, and whereas section 24.4 of the Planning Act provides that where a bylaw is in force, it is deemed to conform to the official plan, and whereas residents in the area, having made inquiries of the town, purchased their homes with the clear understanding that the zoning on the subject property only permitted 3-story townhouses. Be it resolved that number one, the town is opposed to the revised application that proposes for a four-story apartment building on a property that is zoned for 3-story townhouse dwellings, and two, that the Ontario Municipal Board be advised that the town's position is that the more restrictive and specific zoning provisions should prevail over the general policies of the official plan. And I would so move this recommendation.
Is there discussion? Then, council, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that carries. I now call your attention to item number 14, which is another opportunity to have some contact with the Ontario Municipal Board decision. And the recommendation is very plain and very worthy of being in public, that the town solicitor be instructed to intervene in the divisional court proceedings relating to the Ontario Municipal Board decision regarding the Richmond Hill Parkland policies as set out in the report from the legal department dated March 5th. And just to summarize, the Act says that a planning authority such as Richmond Hill or us is entitled to receive 1 hectare of parkland per 300 units of high density. And the board in that case arbitrarily, in my view, restricted the town of Richmond Hill to only 25% of that. And to put that in some context for you, in theory, if you look at the number of high-rise units slated for Oakville in our OP in conformity with the growth plan between now and 2031, we would be entitled with that number to receive up to $13 million a year for parkland. And if the Richmond Hill decision stands, that would fall to 3. And so that gives you an idea of what's our concern. Why would we join in this fight? Well, there's 10 million reasons a year, if you will, in theory. Now, as a practical matter, we may not achieve all of our high-density target, and were we not to, the amount we would receive would be correspondingly reduced. But if you look at the targets in the growth plan, those are the targets set out, and that is thus the hypothetical concern, and that's the dimension of the harm it could cause us. I would just, for your further interest, tell you that I calculate that under Bill 73, where they changed the ratio from 1 to 300 to 1 to 500, we would hypothetically collect 7 million. So we're still got 4 million reasons to join Richmond Hill in this fight. So that's my summary of the situation, and I've tried to show you why I think it's an urgent matter that we join Richmond Hill, who has asked for others to join in this matter because it will assist. You know, the more municipalities that join, I think we're all there in terms of understanding it. So, are there any other, Councillor Adams?
You've explained it wonderfully, and thank you for doing that. And I wonder if on the matter of the provincial considerations, if staff could tell us the process going forward for responding to that threat.
The staff are studying Bill 73, and we'll be receiving, I'm sure, in quick order, a report on that. So I think you can be certain that we will be looking at it at council.
Oh, good, because it's really important.
Well,
thank you.
Yes, it's hypothetically we're losing $6 million a year. Commissioner Closey.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you're correct. We were actually planning on bringing a report forward in April. I think you'll see a very short memo from the legal department in terms of summarizing our quick review of Bill 73, but a more detailed report will come in April.
We will, Council, we will also seek opportunities. You know, the legislature controls who will testify at committees, but we'll be seeking an invitation to see if we can't add a few words of wisdom to the deliberations. I can tell you that on the other side of the ledger, our initial analysis of the Bill 73's changes to development charges are very, very favorable to us, and we'll be getting a report on that soon. So everything's not gloomy. Councillor Mildred.
When the report comes back, can we get a reference back to our, before the 1997 Disastrous Development Charges Act was changed? As to what we lost then, so that people don't lose sight of what we really lost? Like if we don't, and you know where I'm going with this, like never mind the 10% we may get back for something, we're losing so many other dollars with regard to admin buildings, art centers. Like there's millions that we lost back in 1997 that would be good to get the comparison also.
I think you'll be very pleased with the plan I'm putting together to make submissions to the province to restore all of those things. And in order to acquaint them with the enormity of what was, the amount of money, we've got to do that reckoning. So we're going to go down and try to get their attention. I mean, take the courthouse that we have a disgraceful courthouse that is dangerous and doesn't begin to serve our needs. And in fact, we don't even get enough courthouse time to deal with our cases. And so we lose cases as a result. And the province doesn't have the money to build it. And they won't let us at the moment charge growth to build it. And we don't have the money to build it. And justice delayed is justice denied is a basic principle of law I heard somewhere. And I'm not getting any contradiction from our solicitor here. So I think you can go with that. So we've got to put a press on and explain to them. We know where the money is. And since they don't have any, that's the only place to go. And the 1997 gutting of the Development Charges Act, will you let me call it? You will, I know, needs to be reversed. So I'm sure of that. So we need I think I can call the vote on, oh my God, where am I? 14? Because I don't remember doing that. Is everybody satisfied that it's time to vote? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries unanimously. Thank you. So unless I've made a mistake, I believe that we have completed the material for tonight, and it's time to recess until tomorrow at 7 p.m. I look forward to seeing you all there, all here again at 7, and we'll continue to enjoy working together. And we are recessed.